requirements, what is the rate limiting enzyme, compare, contrast both. So take every pathway first individually and master it. Please do not connect unless you have mastered all the pathway. Cholesterol is independent, as I told you, just like me, on its own. Phospholipids, eicosanoids are independent on its own. Only connection I see, which is actually addressed in the lecture, is your intracellular cholesterol pool and that of LDL connecting cholesterol synthesis with lipoprotein. So please don't make that mistake of getting lost into deep connections. Anyways, you should not get lost in any connections, even in life or in biochemistry and genetics. But first, master each pathway, please. Right, with the state. So let's start this. I will slowly go over these slides. I will give you time to ask questions, but something which you think is something you have never heard of and you really want to ask, quickly you can ask me. You have a lot of help. This time I have given you only two recap PowerPoints. Your lecture recap for CP2 has already been shared on the drive, but I will today share a mini lecture recap too, which I'm doing today. Please know that you have one thing student asked me, how do I practice? There's please interactive session questions, practice online, one questions, 5 concepts, they are enough. They are enough, please. Good to end your day with the questions. Always help. Please stick to your learning objective. So let's see how we are going to do fatty acid synthesis. First of all, you cannot mismatch or flip-flop the state. So it's a well-fed state. But what else fatty acid synthesis needs? Just well-fed state? Is that just a well-fed state or it needs something else too? That it cannot be turned on.
It's a change.
AT, high ATP first. So you have to recognize that storage does not start just with high insulin, but no genesis can happen without ATP. Please mute your side. I can hear you. Please be mindful of your fellow students learning, right? So please see that no genesis can happen without ATP. So this genesis fatty acid synthesis, you got to compartmentalize. It's high insulin, high ATP. Absolutely. What happens in high insulin, high ATP state? You start fatty acid synthesis. Does insulin help? Absolutely. It's a well-fed state pathway. Insulin always act by increasing cyclic AMP or decreasing cyclic AMP. No worries. Insulin acts by increasing cyclic AMP or decreasing cyclic AMP. How does insulin act? Increasing or decreasing cyclic AMP? Decreasing cyclic AMP. Always dephosphorylates the key enzyme. Absolutely. Also always dephosphorylates the key enzyme. So first concentrate individually on the pathway, its state, compartmentalization, then tissue specificity. Who can and who cannot use this pathway? You know who can use fatty acid. Who can use fatty acid? Can liver use fatty acid? Can liver use fatty acid? Absolutely, liver can use it. Can muscles use fatty acid? Can muscle use fatty acid? Yes, it can. Why can brain not use fatty acid? Because selective permeability to long chain fatty acid. So there's a selectivity of tissue to fuel for energy. Yes, liver and muscle can use fatty acid after they are formed, but no genesis can happen without ATP. But that's not just the only requirement, high insulin, high ATP, also then bridge in everything that is required for that pathway. Is acetyl-CoA a starting molecule for fatty acid synthesis? So acetyl-CoA is a substrate for fatty acid synthesis. Is it true? Is acetyl-CoA a starting molecule for fatty acid synthesis? Yes or no? Yes, but acetyl-CoA is not just used for fatty acid synthesis, it's used for cholesterol synthesis. It's used for ketone metabolism. But which one is low insulin fate of acetyl-CoA? Acetyl-CoA forming fatty acid, cholesterol, or ketones? Which one is low insulin? ketone. So you got to know requirements of the pathway, state of the pathway. Yes, fatty acid synthesis, starting molecule is acetyl-CoA. And these are all the requirements. You need everything which is in the box. It's not just high insulin, high ATP state. You need donor of carbon, you need donor of hydrogen. How does it start? Go to bake sale, collect a lot of ATP. Citrate will be pushed out and fatty acid synthesis starts. Rate limiting enzyme, definitely ACC. ACC is the rate limiting enzyme. Do you need other enzymes? Absolutely, you need FAS, elongase, desaturase. But rate limiting is only ACC, right? How now ACC, are you taking your daily vitamins? If not, start taking. Your test is near, and also bring it on the test. So when you talk about vitamins, did we talk about biotin? Did we talk about vitamins? Vitamins are great, absolutely. So did we talk about biotin? Bring vitamins everywhere you can connect with the pathway. Don't go wrong. So apart from acetyl-CoA carboxylase, where did this enzyme fit in? Propenyl-CoA carboxylase. Did we do it with any bad oxidation? Propenyl-CoA carboxylase? Did we, oh, you take riboflavin daily, great. Did we do propenyl-CoA carboxylase with a pathway? Yes, odd chain fatty acid oxidation. We did propenyl-CoA carboxylase. So remember that you're bringing in vitamins wherever you can. My aim today is not to teach you, but to just bring you back to the water. You understand how I'm bringing back to the water? How much you drink is your grades. Does that make sense? So fatty acid synthesis, well-fed states, citrate is available, ACC is rate limiting, you need other enzyme too, compartmentalization, cytosolic. Once fatty acid is formed, who can use it? If, liver as well as muscle. Can brain use fatty acid? No, because select long chain is most common. Fatty acid to be used, it's selective permeability. Can mature RBC use fatty acid as fuel for energy? Can mature RBC use fatty acid for fuel for energy? No, because yes. So you have to understand compartmentalization. No, because fatty acid synthesis is cytosolic, but burning is mitochondrial. Acetyl-CoA carboxylase, rate limiting, active when polymerized. Just give me two important ingredients where acetyl-CoA would be active. Two important uh, states where acetyl-CoA carboxylase, when they test you on the pathway related to the enzyme. ACC means, what are you thinking? Are you thinking fatty acid synthesis or oxidation? ACC. ACC. What are you thinking? Which pathway are you thinking? Fatty acid synthesis. So ACC can be active when? When do you think ACC should be active? When do you think high insulin, well-fed state, high insulin as well as high insulin as well as high ATP. But don't forget to bring in everything now. This is just the regulator. I told you there are two things with the pathway: state, regulators, and requirements. You got to enlist all. You can form fatty acid beyond, sorry. You can form fatty acid beyond position 9. That's why what are your essential fatty acid? Linoleic, linolanic. Linoleic is omega 6. Linolanic is omega 3. Do you form any fatty acid from linoleic, which is also essential for eicosanoid metabolism? Does linoleic acid form any fatty acid? Arachidonic acid. We did arachidonic acid as the starting molecule for which pathway? Eicosanoid pathway. So something is starting, something is product. You can't flip-flop that. So arachidonic acid is starting for eicosanoid pathway. Acetyl-CoA is starting for fatty acid synthesis, cholesterol synthesis, ketone synthesis. So you can flip-flop. Tags, always think one state at a time. Well-fed, high insulin, high ATP, you're going from fatty acid to tag synthesis. Don't jump in and bring your fatty acid oxidation here. First complete one state, then compare and contrast the two pathways. I would go say phospholipid eicosanoid, go more clinical. But with other pathways, first understand the pathway before you jump to clinical. Does that make sense? Tag synthesis, all you need to know is where are these two ingredients coming from? There are only two things required in tag synthesis, fatty acyl CoA and glycerol 3 phosphate. So tell me, what is the source of fatty acyl CoA in liver? How do you get fatty acyl CoA in liver to do tag synthesis? How do you get fatty DNL? DNL. And how do you get glycerol 3 phosphate in the liver to do tag synthesis? How do you get glycerol 3 phosphate in the liver to do tag synthesis? Glycerol kinase and DHAP, right? Transporters are GLUT2, but in adipose it's GLUT4. So you got to know tissue where these synthesis is going on. You compare and contrast them. For tags, don't get lost in a big picture. All you need are two ingredients, which is glycerol 3 phosphate and DHAP. Now, students are confused with lipoprotein. Is one of the destination of chylomicrons and VLDL adipose? Is one of the destination of chylomicrons and VLDL adipose? This is exactly what is happening here. The destination of chylomicrons and VLDL is adipose. LPL is an extracellular enzyme hanging in the vessels of both tissue. So you can make a connection, but I will still request you for don't make connection unless you have mastered each pathway. First, you know fatty acid synthesis, tag synthesis, fatty acid oxidation, tag lipolysis. If you have time, you make connection, but don't forget to make the connection between intracellular cholesterol pool and LDL. That is important, right? That is all addressed to by Dr. Binstock. So are you going to compare contrast? Absolutely. You're going to compare contrast, not just fatty acid synthesis and oxidation, but if tag synthesis is have to be compare contrast between liver and adipose tissue, because what is missing is important, right? What is missing is important. What you miss in life is important, right? What you have, you're not grateful for, but what you miss in life is important. Then you come to fatty acid. First, you do fatty acid synthesis, tag synthesis. Now you come to a low insulin state. You have done tag synthesis. Let's talk about tag lipolysis. So, what enzyme should I talk about when I say tag lipolysis? Anything comes to your mind? HSL, right? Don't say LPL. So here you have to compare, contrast different enzyme to very good. When I'm saying tag lipolysis, I'm going to talk about HSL. Please do not start fat metabolism in a low insulin state without turning on this tap, which is HSL. HSL. When you say low insulin, what comes to your mind? What state comes to your mind? When do you think is low insulin? Just starving, you directly jump to starving. Everybody's starving here. Everybody's fasting. Everybody's sleeping for sure, right? You had a good sleep. So in low insulin state is in between meals, sleep, fasting, starvation, and then diabetes. Very good. I like that. So first of all, you should know states. You should know which state this pathway is turned on or off. What is the enzyme? Relate the right enzyme to the right pathway. You cannot start fat metabolism unless you turn on this big tap, which is HSL. First of all, are you following my pace? Are you following my pace? Everybody is good with that? Great, 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 great. Okay, great. So you turn on this tap HSL, what you get? Fatty acids and glycerol. I will talk only about fatty acid because here we are talking about fat metabolism. So is fat picked up by liver and muscle? Also understand, try to start relating whenever low insulin state, which hormone should I talk about more in any pathway. So when it's low insulin, don't forget what is the antagonist hormone we should talk about? Not glucagon. When you are saying low insulin state for tag lipolysis, what hormone should come in? Cortisol and epinephrine. Epinephrine and cortisol should kick in just to be clear in your mind, which are also antagonist hormone. Yes, but if you can do well-fed and low insulin, absolutely wonderful. But if you can add in low insulin, what else? That brings you more and more good grades, right? Does that make sense? And when fatty acid, low insulin state, you turn on the tap HSL, and fatty acids are picked by liver and muscle. Naturally, it's a low insulin state. What are you expecting once fatty acid and low insulin state reach liver and muscle? Once fatty acid in low insulin state reach liver and muscle, what will start? It's a low insulin state. So fatty acid will start. What will start with fatty acid? In a low insulin, oxidation, breaking down. But one thing is that, which is unique, that fat oxidation in liver supports gluconeogenesis and ketogenesis. Is it related to diabetes? Absolutely. Type 1 diabetes, this tap is on or off? Type 1 diabetics, HSL is on or off? Type 1 diabetes, big time on. And that leads to what? Diabetic ketoacidosis in them. Diabetic ketoacidosis in them. So see what I did. First, I did the pathway and then I connected clinically. That you got to do with pathways other than phospholipids and eicosanoid. Does that make sense? You got to understand the pathway. Yes, but low insulin state, the HSL tap is on, fatty acid is released in liver and muscle, picked up, big time oxidation, then compartmentalization. It's mitochondrial. So can brain, so can a mature RBC use fat for energy? It's a mitochondrial pathway. Fatty acid synthesis is cytosolic. Oxidation is mitochondrial. What I said about diabetic ketoacidosis is, diabetic ketoacidosis, what are you expecting HSL to be? Highly active or inactive? Diabetic ketoacidosis, highly active. So when diabetic ketoacidosis, HSL will be active. What else will output will turn on big time from liver? That are there two things that will also turn on big time in liver when HSL is active? Something that glucose and ketones, and that leads to diabetic ketoacidosis. That leads to diabetic ketoacidosis. Absolutely. Please ask your question. And me repeating that may help others also to focus and learn. So if you have quick questions, absolutely ask me. Mitochondrial pathway, RBC cannot use it. Mature RBC, brain can use it too because long chain oxidation is common. This pathway does not require ATP, please. This pathway gives you ATP. So what will turn on fatty acid oxidation? High ATP or high AMP? What will turn on fatty acid oxidation? High ATP or high AMP? So see, you don't flip-flop. You know the purpose of the pathway. So see how broad I am going rather than getting lost in the steps. Does that make sense? Also, don't forget the clinical steps, the drug-related step or regulated step. But otherwise, don't get lost in drawing the steps, but do get lost in physiologically and clinically important steps. Right? Does that make sense? Rate limiting enzyme, definitely CPT1, regulated by malonyl CoA. So high malonyl CoA, why does it turn off fatty acid oxidation? Because what do you want to do in that state? High malonyl CoA in a cytosol, why does it turn off fatty acid oxidation? Because what do you want to turn on? What do you want to turn on when malonyl CoA is high in the cytosol? It prefers fatty acid synthesis, right? That's why you know that. But don't forget that there are different types of oxidation. Please know that I am going a little fast. So if you can answer and others can, you should not be discouraged, right? My speed is fast, right? So all I'm trying to bring is your attention. Whoever can answer, answer. Don't get discouraged about follow your own race. Okay, you have your own speed and on your own line. Stay in your own line and your own goal. Okay, let them answer. Let them answer. It's a lot of speed that I'm talking, so it can be all can answer that, right? So don't take it as a positive learning experience here. Secondly, not just restricting to a compartmentalization, you have type of fatty acid: beta, long chain; alpha branched, phytanic; omega, short; and very long was peroxisome. So what is very long? I'm saying short, long, very long. What do you mean by very long? What does very long means? more than 20. Long means more than 12. So you got to understand that classification too, right? And yes, beta is the most common. Beta is missing in MCAT deficiency. Now you're not drawing this structure and feeling happy about it, but it's important for you to know the types too. Yes, the types of oxidation, which I have enumerated well in this slide, based on chain length. So yes, what did we do? The HSL tap was on, fatty acid release picked up by liver and muscle, big time oxidation starts because it's a low insulin state. Now, don't get lost in the steps. Activation, entry, oxidation starts. What do you need at the entry? Carnitine shuttle. What does carnitine shuttle have? Carnitine carrier, CPT outer, CPT inner. Carnitine meat product source. CPT1 affects liver, CPT2 muscle. Though I will not talk about all because then you get lost. Major, actually more common are CPT2 and MCAD. CPT2 or MCAD, which affects liver? Which affects liver, CP2 or MCAD? Which deficiency? MCAD deficiency. Because signs and symptoms become different, right? MCAD affects liver. CPT2 affects muscle. So broadly, activation, moving inside, burning it on. Yes, we talk about CPT1. Carnitine shuttle has carnitine carrier, meat products. CPT1 outer, CPT2 inner. And but this enzyme also big time, dehydrogenase, is turning on. It's turning on. It's the main enzyme that is turning on. It's not rate limiting. So what was rate limiting here? What was rate limiting here? What was rate limiting here for beta oxidation? Any enzyme? CPT1, which was here. Also, please see any fat metabolism defect, what will accumulate in the circulation? Acyl carnitines, but except in primary carnitine deficiency. Secondly, MCAD deficiency, Dr. Panini has, and in the CV has been explained, instead of saying just acyl carnitine, they are more specific. Medium chain acyl carnitines will accumulate, right? Because it's MCAD deficiency. Now, also understand that acyl-CoA dehydrogenase is different type, long chain, short chain, medium chain. Here comes the MCAD deficiency. So what are you trying to do is just relate the enzyme. If I'm talking about beta oxidation, I should first talk about H state, low insulin. I should talk about HSL. I should talk about CPT1, and I should talk about dehydrogenases. Now, don't say that if somebody says CPT1, don't say it's an enzyme for fatty acid synthesis. That's a disaster, right? Does that make sense? So their compartmentalization is required. No, this is my enzyme. This is my pathway. It is in this state. This is its rate limiting enzyme. This is the requirements. Is it for ATP? Does it require ATP or it gives ATP? All that that is important rather than getting lost in every step. Does that make sense? Concentrated fuel, you know that. So what did we talk about? Fatty acid oxidation, I talked about HSL, first of all, active in low insulin state. I talked about HSL. I talked about this being picked by liver and muscle. I talked about liver. It also supports gluconeogenesis, ketogenesis. Then I talked about the steps, activation, carnitine shuttle, and burning, right? Also, we talked about different types, beta, alpha, omega, peroxisomes, right? And what state? Is this pathway for energy? Is fatty acid oxidation for energy? Is fatty acid oxidation good? So who will turn on this pathway? Absolutely. High levels of, what will turn on this pathway? High levels of AMP. So we have done all that. Let's stay positive. Is ACC, so when they test you on the enzyme, relate to the pathway. Is ACC a well-fed state pathway? Well-fed state enzyme? Is ACC a well-fed state enzyme? Absolutely. Let's stay positive, right? Let's stay positive in life. For disorders, come last in these pathways. For disorders, there are only two distinctions, please. Don't get lost. If fatty acids affect liver, any fat metabolism affects liver, low glucose, low ketone. If any fat metabolism affect muscle on the right side, low ATP. That's the only difference in signs and symptoms. Commonly, you have talked about only two. One is CP2, which affects on the right side, muscle, MCAD's left side, liver primarily. But talk about major disease, talk about in major pathway. When you do clinical in these pathway, don't get lost in every sign and symptom. Okay, if this fat metabolism is affecting liver, I will see low ketone, low glucose. MCAT deficiency. If that this fat metabolism is affecting muscle, I will see only decreased exercise tolerance. Does that make sense? Omega oxidation is for short chain, right? We did beta, alpha, omega, and peroxisomes, right? Omega is for short chain, also turned on when there is no beta oxidation. Where is no beta oxidation taught to you? MCAT deficiency. Please see how I am going a little broad in these metabolic pathway rather than going into nitty-gritty details. Are you following that? So don't make that mistake. Now see, this should not scare you. We already did that. CPT2 muscle, MCAD liver. Did we talk about peroxisomes? Did we talk about peroxisomes? So compartmentalize the cytosolic, mitochondrial, peroxisomal concept. Then, okay, memorizing. Oh my God, X-linked adeno. I can't even pronounce that, but anyways. X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy. I'm just joking, but saying it defect is in the, is it the defect in biogenesis, assembly, transport? No, don't get lost in that. Understand first compartmentalization, cytosolic, mitochondrial, peroxisome, why you need them, who needs them. Do CPT2, yes, muscle, MCAD, liver, but not every enzyme, not every disease, right? Does that make sense? And don't get lost in details. Do understand that any flip-flop will affect your grade more. Does that make sense? Yes. For example, okay, I'll just ask you, adult Refsum's disease. Are you relating it to very long chain? Adult Refsum's disease. Do you want to relate it to very long chain fatty acids? Defect? Adult Refsum's disease. No, it's for phytanic acid. So the adult refsum is not that important, but relating adult refsums to very long chain fatty acid is wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? So understand it in broad way. Please bring in your vitamin. This is for odd chain. We did propionyl-CoA, methylmalonyl-CoA, and succinyl-CoA pathway. Absolutely, it's very clear. Only in carboxylase and biotin deficiency will propionyl-CoA be low or methylmalonyl-CoA be low. In carboxylase or biotin deficiency, will you see low propionyl-CoA or methylmalonyl-CoA? In biotin or carboxylase deficiency, will you see low methylmalonyl-CoA? So the clinical steps, the vitamins, the drugs are important because then only you will know what is accumulating and what is depleting. If you don't know these steps, you will not understand that why methylmalonyl-CoA is low in this step defect. So yeah, you got to concentrate on the vitamin, drugs, clinical condition steps, right? I'm taking you to the steps. So this is a multiple vitamin dependent pathway with odd chain fatty acid. We did all of them: propionyl-CoA, methylmalonyl-CoA, succinyl-CoA, right? Yes, it may also cause metabolic acidosis. For example, let's go back. That's a very good question. That does it also cause metabolic acidosis? Absolutely. Now look at this. In carboxylase defect, the metabolic acidosis will be because of methylmalonic acid or propionic acid. In carboxylase defect, metabolic acidosis will be because of methylmalonic acid or propionic acid. In carboxylase deficiency, the metabolic acidosis will be because of propionic acid. So anytime somebody has a good question, it also leads to metabolic acidosis. Anytime propionic acid, methylmalonic acid, or keto acids accumulate, we have done all these three, they lead to metabolic acidosis. So did I answer your question? Absolutely. The step defect can also lead to metabolic acidosis. If you don't have mutase, it builds up. If you don't have mutase, then propionic acid does build up, but you have to concentrate on the immediate first. Immediately acidosis will be because of in mutase. Acidosis will be because of immediately. Acidosis would be in mutase. Acidosis will be because of in mutase. Anyone. If you have a mutase defect, then acidosis will be because of methyl malonic acid first. Everything above the block accumulates, but you got to concentrate on the step, right? So, but in carboxylase deficiency, acidosis will not be because of methyl malonic acid. Do you understand that? In carboxylase deficiency, acidosis will not be because of methyl malonic acid. So that is why the step is important. But yes, they also cause acidosis. And that is why I have addressed acidosis with three things: ketoacidosis, diabetes type 1, propionic acid, and methyl malonic acid. Yes, they are cause of acidosis for fat, but you got to understand where and when, right? Does that make sense? Yes, very good question. Do they cause acidosis? Absolutely. I think I have mentioned it later. So how do you do low insulin state with fat? HSL, fat oxidation. Fat oxidation in liver, then start ketone metabolism. Ketone metabolism, where is major site? Where do you synthesize ketones? Ketones major site, synthesis. Synthesis is? Yes, if you don't have mutase, then methyl malonic acid will build up. If I want to answer somebody's asking me question. Yes, yes. This is enzyme deficiency, substrate buildup, product depleted. Now my next question is, who uses ketone bodies? Who uses ketone? Where is ketone synthesis? Sorry. Ketone synthesis, major site. Where do you synthesize ketones? Liver. But who uses ketone bodies? No, where means I'm not talking about pathological condition. I was talking about physiologically. Where do you synthesize ketone? Liver. But who uses ketone body? Extrahepatic tissue, muscle and brain. Yes. So tissue specificity is there. I have clearly mentioned that, right? Again, is it a well-fed state pathway? Is ketones a well-fed state pathway? There is tissue specificity for ketones. Liver synthesize it, but brain and muscle use it. And is it a well-fed state pathway? Is ketone a well-fed state pathway? No, it's a low insulin pathway. Yes, brain will use it in prolonged starvation. Brain can use ketones. Muscles can use ketones. Liver synthesizes them, but they are used by extrahepatic tissue. Absolutely. Same pathway. You turn on HSL, you turn on fat burning, and chief site of ketone synthesis is liver, used by extrahepatic tissue. Which one? Brain and muscle. Primarily, I'm talking about primary. Otherwise, we can talk about the whole body, right? We can sit here in the evening till the evening, but I'm talking about major, primary, right? Which is the first ketone body, which is the ketone body which is expired through breath and has a fruity odor? Acetone. And through urine, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate. Again, a low insulin pathway. Are they responsible for acidosis? Yes, I mentioned ketoacidosis, propionic acid, and methyl malonic acid. Yes, they are also responsible for acidosis. So see, how did I address ketone metabolism? Overview, HSL turned on, fatty acid liver burning, ketone starts, ketone metabolism, synthesis, liver. I went to tissue specificity, extrahepatic, brain and muscle use it. And then acetone, breath, beta hydroxybutyrate, more commonly urine. Do they also cause acidosis? Absolutely. Yes, primary carnitine deficiency will not build up acyl carnitines because carnitine is not even there. So how can you build up acyl carnitines? Acyl carnitine building up means carnitine is combining with fatty acid. When carnitine is not there, how will acyl carnitine builds up? Acyl carnitine only build up when you have any defect in either transporting fatty acid inside the mitochondria or using them, right? Then only acyl carnitine will build up. Somebody has a question? Absolutely. Phospholipids don't get lost in pathways and steps. You have to go clinical, absolutely. You have to, yes, anyone has a question? You have to okay, no question yet. Great. So what are we doing with phospholipids? We are going clinical. First of all, you are identifying lipids which have sphingol alcohol known as sphingolipid, and you are doing all sphingolipidoses. So which lipid has complex lipid has sphingol? We talk about sphingomyelin and glycolipids. Their defect is known as sphingolipidosis. They are all lysosomal storage diseases. But please don't forget lipids, complex lipid that have glycerol alcohol. You have some important physiological and clinical phospholipids here. So one of them we talked about is phosphatidylinositol, phospholipase C. Have you learned it somewhere? Phosphatidylinositol, phospholipase C. They don't have sphingol alcohol, but they are important, still important physiological lipids. Phosphatidylinositol, phospholipase C. Have you learned that? Which pathway? Have you learned phospholipase C, phosphatidylinositol, IP3? Yes. Have you learned that? You have learned them in? Yes, signal transduction. Great. So see, yes, you should know complex lipid with sphingol alcohol, sphingomyelin, and glycolipid, but you also have lipids which have glycerol alcohol, right? Dr. Panini has mentioned primary and secondary pathway. Secondary pathway only saves ATP and all the excess. Otherwise, they will be fastly used, right? So don't get lost in the pathway, but understand the sphingol containing lipids and the glycerol containing lipid and sphingol lipid with sphingolipidosis. Phospholipase A2, we talked about phospholipase A2. Where did we talk about phospholipase A2? See, you told me signal transduction. Did we talk about phospholipase A2 somewhere? Any drug? Any drug, any pathway? We talked about phospholipase A2. Anyone? Any drug or pathway? We talked about phospholipase A2. We talked about icosanoid, arachidonic acid, any drug. Do you remember the drug when we talked about phospholipase A2 pathway? Is there any inhibitor there? Steroids. See you. So you got to understand phospholipase A2 because it's coming twice. And yes, you did that with steroids. Steroids inhibit phospholipase A2. So see, you're going more clinical and physiological with icosanoid and phospholipid pathway. We talked about phospholipase C and this complex lipid which has glycerol was important. And then we talked about big group of sphingolipidosis. We are not doing everything, please. Don't be carried away with all the first three you have done. You have gained your grades. Let's concentrate on the last one, which is your sphingolipidosis. Compare and contrast Niemann-Pick with Tay-Sachs. So which has cherry red macula and heparosplenomegaly? I'll just test you on that. So then you finish your sphingolipidosis. Cherry red macula, heparosplenomegaly, Niemann-Picks. Only cherry red macula. Yeah, cherry red macula and hepatosplenomegaly, both Niemann-Pick. Only cherry red, Tay-Sachs. Great. So tell me, galactosidase deficiency, you would relate to which disorder? Galactosidase. Is it Fabry's or is it Niemann-Pick? Fabry's. So see, there is, how do you distinguish these disorder? Either by enzyme deficiency, either by what is accumulating, or by clinical signs and symptoms. So keep an eye on that, and Dr. Panini has absolutely wonderfully explained that in the slides. For example, foam-looking cells. What am I talking? Am I talking Tay-Sachs or Niemann-Pick? Foam-looking cells. I'm talking Niemann-Pick, right? So try to distinguish. For example, sphingomyelinase deficiency. Which sphingolipidosis I'm talking? Sphingomyelinase deficiency. Which sphingolipidosis I'm talking? Sphingomyelinase. Niemann-Pick. Very good, very good. So you get my point. GM2 gangliosides accumulating. We did it in our interactive session. Which sphingolipidosis I'm talking? GM2, Tay-Sachs. So if you don't flip-flop this, the enzyme, the what is accumulating, signs and symptoms, you know sphingolipidosis. Am I right? So did I tell you how should you know sphingolipidosis? Yes, keep bringing them up. Whether it's Niemann-Pick, please, many students ask me, A and B are for sphingolipidosis. C is not for sphingolipidosis. A and B are for. Somebody was asking me, so I'm clarifying. See, I asked you foam cells. Foam cells are Niemann-Pick. So bring Niemann-Pick, bring your Tay-Sachs, your Gauchers, your Fabry's, right? Dr. Panini has not talked about Sandhoff's, but I do bring Sandhoff's before explaining Fabry's. It becomes easy, right? But he has not talked about Sandhoff's. I would agree that, right? Now come to cholesterol. Please, you have a primer. Somebody was asking me 7 alpha hydroxylase. I have not heard about it because basically you don't even look at your primers. But anyways, I understand you don't have time, and I've also told you first master your lecture. Then if you have difficulty, you go to primer. But 7 alpha hydroxylase is in your primer for bile acid synthesis. I'm just clarifying. At least have that in your mind. Okay, 7 alpha hydroxylase is in your primer for bile acid synthesis. Again, acetyl CoA is a product of cholesterol or starting molecule. So you are not going wrong with the pathway, knowing what starts, what finishes, right? I have very few slides left, but do you want me to give you a break and finish them, or you want me to just finish them? Do you want me to give a break at 10:50? Are you okay? Should I finish them, everyone? Okay, great. I will finish them. Okay, great. So again, when you say cholesterol synthesis, is acetyl-CoA starting or a product? Is acetyl-CoA a starting molecule for cholesterol synthesis or a product? Is it starting or a product? It's a starting molecule. You can't flip-flop that. You can't flip-flop the requirement state, what is being formed, because that will unsettle whole pathway. This acetyl-CoA is a starting molecule. Please, cholesterol has the same requirements as fatty acid synthesis, except it's cytosolic as fatty acid synthesis. It requires a lot of insulin, lot of ATP. Everything is the same except rate limiting enzyme. So if you do fatty acid synthesis requirements, it fits exactly well with cholesterol synthesis. You don't have to worry. Except one fate of acetyl-CoA. So acetyl-CoA is starting for fatty acid, is starting for cholesterol and ketone. But which fate is low insulin out of all of them? Which pathway is low insulin? Fatty acid synthesis, cholesterol synthesis, or ketone? A ketone is low insulin, absolutely. How did we, what's the rate limiting enzyme? HMG-CoA reductase. Did we talk about natural inhibitors and statins here? Absolutely. Are you going to relate the intracellular cholesterol pool with LDL here? Absolutely. You got to make that connection through which protein? SREBP. So we did talk about cholesterol. So first finish what cholesterol is. Please, I'm giving you a skeleton. You should go back to Dr. Binstock's slide and see what cholesterol synthesis required, just as I have a list with fatty acid synthesis in minds. Similarly, finish what enzymes they require. What is the state? Well-fed state, rate-limiting enzyme, inhibitors. So please do go back to her slide with my focus. Does that make sense? I'm giving you my focus, but I'm not asking you to just stick to my slide. I will always encourage you to go back to your professor's slide with my focus, because I give you focus so you don't get lost, right? But you got to fill in the focus with your professor's slide. Yes. So yes, we did cholesterol as cytosolic pathway. Cholesterol is for energy. Is cholesterol for energy? Is cholesterol for energy? Is cholesterol for... No, it is for steroid, vitamin D, bile acids, and membrane. And that's why you have cholesterol and bile acid also as inhibitor. What was SREBP doing? You know the intracellular cholesterol pool. When it is intracellular cholesterol pool is low, is SREBP released? When intracellular cholesterol, yeah, it's released. And what will happen to HMG-CoA? If intracellular cholesterol pool is low, HMG-CoA is upregulated, yes, or downregulated, upregulated. An LDL receptor on the surface when intracellular cholesterol pool is low is also LDL receptor on the surface upregulated. Please know that this is a we now will do lipoprotein, which is the last section. This is the protective nature of our body and nature, that LDL should be pushed more and more inside the liver to utilize its cholesterol. Too much cholesterol in the circulation is not good. Upregulation of LDL receptor is beneficial. It's beneficial in case of hypercholesterolemia. Your body has a protective nature to push all the LDL by B100 receptors in the liver. So that intracellular cholesterol pool is important. It's protective. It is utilizing cholesterol. Lipoprotein. Students are struggling with lipoprotein, so I would go a little slow, not very slow too, to understand lipoprotein. If you have any question, you can stop me, but don't panic. Yeah, no panic here, right? I'm here, okay? So when you say lipoprotein, first you got to identify types. Tag rich, you only does high cholesterol. Absolutely, that's but Amir, I would not anyone. I would not encourage you to do both way. If you are comfortable doing one way, that is reduce intracellular cholesterol pool, upregulate HMG-CoA reductase, activate HMG-CoA reductase, upregulate LDL receptor. Now, don't waste your time doing what will happen when intracellular cholesterol pool will be high. Naturally, it will be opposite, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? For example, I'm saying that fatty acid synthesis is active in a well-fed state. Now, what will happen to fatty acid synthesis in a low insulin state? If fatty acid synthesis is active in a well-fed state, what will happen to fatty acid synthesis in a low insulin state? Will it be active? No, so but why do two ways, right? It's just going to clog and fog your brain with a lot of information. Best is to solidify one part which you don't have time, and then when you are tested on a question, don't break that foundation. Let your cake be baked well. Does that make sense? So I think do it one way, and opposite is definitely applicable, right? Does that make sense? Once you know one regulation, high or low intracellular cholesterol pool, the other will definitely be the opposite. Does that make sense? Right? So again, if somebody has confusion, if your intracellular cholesterol pool is low, through SREBP, HMG-CoA reductase will be active and LDL receptor on the surface will be upregulated. Is that clear to everyone? Is that regulation? And that makes sense, yeah, right? If you don't have cholesterol, you want more cholesterol. So you will turn on HMG-CoA reductase. You will push, you will want LDL to be brought up more by B100 inside the liver cells, right? So again, let's concentrate on lipoprotein. You first have to distinguish your tag-rich lipoprotein, which are which one? What are your tag-rich lipoprotein? Because LPL comes there big time. What are your tag-rich lipoprotein? Chylomicrons, absolutely, and VLDL. And which enzyme acts on them? Which enzyme acts on chylomicrons and VLDL tags? VLDL tags LPL. That's why when LPL is inactive, which lipoprotein and their fat will accumulate if LPL is inactive? Which lipoprotein and fat will accumulate if LPL is inactive? What will accumulate in circulation if LPL is not working? Which lipoprotein will be high if LPL is not working? Chylomicron? No, not LDL and cholesterol. Nope, nope, no tags. Chylomicrons, VLDL. LPL has nothing to do with LDL and cholesterol, please. So don't make that mistake. LPL has nothing to do with LDL and cholesterol. LPL is only working with tag-rich lipoprotein, chylomicrons, and VLDL. So when LPL is not working, chylomicron, VLDL, and tags will accumulate. Nothing to do with cholesterol and LDL. You got to make that distinction. Sorry. Cholesterol-rich LDL, protein and phospholipid HDL. Which one is bad cholesterol, LDL or HDL? Which one is bad cholesterol, LDL, LDL? Why? Because it moves cholesterol Why is it bad? Because one of the fate of LDL is to move cholesterol towards the peripheral tissue. So tag-rich chylomicrons, VLDL, digested by which extracellular enzyme? LPL, cholesterol-rich LDL, protein and phospholipid HDL, which is a bad cholesterol LDL, then recognizing its markers. Please know that lipoprotein is for transport of lipid. Right? However, you can memorize it, but don't get it wrong on the exam, right? Markers. B48 chylomicrons, only B100 LDL. Who recognizes LDL? B100 receptors. Where are B100 receptors? Where are B100 receptors? B100 receptors are on the liver to uptake LDL. ApoE is for remnants. Anywhere there is remnant. What do you know as remnant? What are remnants? What are remnants? Can you name two remnants that you have learned with Dr. Binstock? Are there any remnants that you have learned? There are two remnants that you have run, chylomicron remnant and ideal. Very good. So see, that's all you need to know. Ideal and chylomicron remnant. Don't panic about chylomicron. Chylomicron, you know, rich in tags, but which tag? Your dietary or exogenous tags. Where is the destination? Where are they? Origin? Intestine. What's the destination of chylomicrons? Origin? Intestine, carrier of dietary tags. But what is their destination? What's the destination of kalava? Adipose or muscle. What's hanging in there? LPL. LPL is to do with chylomicrons and VLDL tags. Remnant, once tags are hydrolyzed, picked up by liver. What are these receptors which are picking up these remnants? They are ApoE. You have learned E2, E3, and E4. E3 is for lipoprotein metabolism. Any question about chylomicron? Are you clear? Any question about chylomicron? Because students are struggling with lipoprotein. Everybody is good, right? Let's go to VLDL. Please, VLDL, VLDL does not start unless you is LDL the remnant? No, LDL is not the remnant. The remnant of VLDL is IDL. IDL can form LDL, but LDL is not the remnant. IDL is the remnant. Yes, LDL is not a remnant. IDL can form LDL. Don't start VLDL unless you do tag synthesis in the liver. Once you do tag synthesis in the liver, can you, once you do tag synthesis in liver, should they remain in the liver or they should be exported out? Once you do tag synthesis, how do you start VLDL metabolism? By doing tags. You have to export them out. How do you export out tags from the liver, which is endogenous tags in the form of VLDL? Then starts VLDL metabolism. Origin, liver, but destination, same. Adipose and muscle, same enzyme hanging there. Which one? LPL. So why origin of VLDL is liver? Because VLDL is a carrier of dietary tags or endogenous tags. Liver is a carrier of dietary, VLDL is a carrier of, sorry. Why origin of VLDL is liver? VLDL is a carrier of dietary or exogenous tag or endogenous tag. Not both. Endogenous tags. That's why its origin is liver. Do you do tag synthesis in liver? Do you do tag synthesis in liver? Yes or no? Yes, but it has to be exported out, VLDL. Destination, same as chylomicron, except VLDL remnant is known as? VLDL remnant is known as? Ideal. Does ideal have two fate? Yes, can be picked up by liver or converted into LDL. So VLDL goes into ideal and LDL. Has LDL two fate? Either picked up by liver or towards the peripheral tissue. Why is it a bad cholesterol? Why is it the bad cholesterol? Because it gives cholesterol to the, why is LDL a bad cholesterol? Because it gives cholesterol. Yes, because yes, number one, it gives cholesterol to the peripheral tissue. Then first saying it gets oxidized. Only when this fate is missing, you see my cursor? So don't say that it is a bad cholesterol because it can form oxidized LDL. No, it's a bad cholesterol because if LDL is not picked up by liver, it will accumulate in the circulation and then convert into oxidized LDL. But this is bad. It's one fate of LDL, is it can go to the peripheral tissue. HDL does not do that. So it's bad not because it becomes oxidized LDL. It's bad because one of its fate is to go towards peripheral tissue. So again, quickly, origin, liver, destination, adipose muscle, LPL hanging there, ideal, VLDL, ideal, LDL. LDL picked up by liver or peripheral tissue. This becomes bad when this fate is missing, which is familial hypercholesterolemia. So are you good with VLDL? Yes. And did I talk about both chylomicron and VLDL destination as one of the destination as adipose? Did I talk about both chylomicron and VLDL destination as adipose? And did I talk about LPL hanging there? In adipose too, adipose vessels, LPL is an extracellular enzyme. So see, if you want to connect, even then I would tell you don't connect. Do these pathways differently. I just got this because some students are confused. Where is VLDL going? Where is chylomicron going? VLDL and chylomicron are going to adipose and muscle. Is LDL internalized? Yes. So again, quickly, VLDL origin liver, destination adipose and muscle, forms ideal, then forms LDL. Is LDL picked up by liver? Once LDL is formed, is it picked up by liver? Yes, and they are clathrin-coated, highly regulated receptor. That's why you talk about this big pool. Should intracellular cholesterol pool is regulated? Absolutely, by SREBP, right? I talked about that pool. What is clinically beneficial for hypercholesterolemia patient? Do you want to upregulate LDL receptor or downregulate LDL receptor? For any patients with hypercholesterolemia, you want to upregulate LDL. This is a protective effect. You want to bring in more and more LDL inside the liver so that you have less chances to accumulate LDL in circulation and form oxidized LDL. One thing is very important. So you got to understand this intracellular cholesterol pool, its regulation through SREBP and the beneficial effect. One thing you got to understand, well, I think I missed what I was telling you, important thing. Anyways, okay, when it comes to me. Great. So one thing you got to understand that intracellular cholesterol pool is highly regulated. B100 receptors are highly regulated. Okay, I got it. Scavenger receptors are not regulated. Scavenger receptors are only for two things, oxidized LDL and HDL. They are not regulated. B100 receptors that take in cholesterol are regulated. Please do only one way. It is done through SREBP, and clinically beneficial is to move the cholesterol from circulation to liver or from liver to circulation. What is beneficial? To move more and more LDL from circulation to liver, from circulation to liver. Understand that beneficial effect clinically too. But first you did the pathway, first you did cholesterol synthesis, what all it requires, rate limiting enzyme, intracellular cholesterol pool, SREBP. Then you talk about drugs, familial hypercholesterolemia. Any question on lipoprotein before I quickly finish it? Everybody's good? Are you following this? Is it helping? You have any question? Everybody is good. So see, this is the summary. You do tag synthesis, export out as the VLDL, you form IDL, LDL. IDL and LDL both can be picked up by liver, but LDL is a bad cholesterol because delivers cholesterol to the peripheral tissue. This is not a bad function, but it becomes bad when LDL is not picked up. Where does this fate become bad? The B fate. When does the B fate become bad? When does the B fate become bad? When what is missing? When A is missing, when LDL is not picked up by B100 receptors, which is seen in familial hypercholesterolemia. Low copies, LDL not picked up. Is it good? No. Oxidized LDL, sorry, is atherogenic, and this will cause MI or atherosclerosis. So you did familial hypercholesterolemia. Why familial hypercholesterolemia is double whammy? Number one, in familial hypercholesterolemia, can LDL be picked up? Can LDL be picked up by liver in familial hypercholesterolemia? No, because there's an ApoB100 and LDL receptor defect. Secondly, is LDL building up in circulation in familial hypercholesterolemia? Is LDL building up in circulation? Absolutely. And then double whammy is that LDL will now go towards the peripheral tissue, and there are standing the scavenger receptors that are not regulated. They will just take in all the oxidized LDL and cause atherosclerosis and MI. Absolutely. So yes, these are scavenger receptors which are very dangerous. Scavenger receptors are for oxidized LDL and HDL. They have typical xanthoma. What accumulates in familial hypercholesterolemia? Which lipoprotein and which lipid? What accumulates in familial hypercholesterolemia? Which lipoprotein and which lipid? LDL and not ideal, not ideal. Ideal is not a good answer. At this point, ideal is not a good answer, please. LDL and its cholesterol accumulate in the circulation. Does that make sense? No ideal. Ideal is good to understand metabolism, that VLDL, ideal LDL conversion, but not for familial hypercholesterolemia. We talk about LDL. Please, this is where I'm requesting you. First, concentrate on the step. Then go. If you don't find the answer in the step, then you go above, right? So in familial hypercholesterolemia, IDL will not accumulate. Primarily, your mind should be LDL and cholesterol. Homozygous form need extra attention, because who has high cholesterol, heterozygous or homozygous forms? Heterozygotes or homozygous form need extra attention. PCSK9 degrades LDL receptor, right? So gain of function, Dr. Dr. Binstock has mentioned that PCSK9 degrades LDL receptor. So gain of function or loss of function of PCSK9 will lead to familial hypercholesterolemia, may lead to. PCSK9 degrades LDL receptors. So gain of function or loss of function of PCSK9. Gain of function, no normal to understand abnormal or treatment. Please, then only you will understand them. So we did talk about homozygous form. We did talk about PCSK9, HDL. HDL is the last. HDL is a good cholesterol. It moves cholesterol away from peripheral tissue to liver. Who helps? To proteins, the transporter and PCAT. That's all about HDL. Should be high or low for good protection of heart. HDL should be high. HDL should be high because it's a good cholesterol. Is it involved in reverse cholesterol transport? This is reverse cholesterol away from peripheral tissue back to liver. Also, they have scavenger receptors, please. But this is all about HDL. You don't have PCAT is extracellular. LPL is extracellular. They both are LPL enzyme. But remember, LPL acts on which lipoprotein? LPL is with which lipoproteins? LPL. LPL is with which lipoprotein? VLDL and chylomicrons. And LCAT, PCAT is with HDL. So see, I'm going broad. What is HDL? Good cholesterol. Its function, rather than drawing everything, right? The purpose. And should it be high? Is it protective? Absolutely, you should know that. Icosanoid, go clinical in icosanoid, go clinical in phospholipids. I'm not saying don't go clinical in other metabolism pathway, but don't miss to go clinical here. Did we talk about arachidonic acid starting point, not acetyl-CoA? Who's starting point for icosanoid? Arachidonic acid. Who is giving arachidonic acid? Phospholipase A2, and who gives you arachidonic acid in the body? Phospholipase A2 and any other fatty acid that gives you arachidonic acid? Phospholipase A2 and linoleic acid. Two pathways, don't mix and mess them up. Cyclo, are they producing leukotrienes? Are cyclopathways, cyclooxygenase pathway producing leukotrienes? It's not that you are not doing the pathway, but don't forget to end this pathway very well clinically and physiologically. Also, phospholipid, do not forget to finish the pathway more. Where should be your more concentration physiologically, clinically? So tell me, cyclooxygenase are producing leukotrienes? What do cyclooxygenase produce? Do they produce leukotrienes? Yes or no? Do cyclooxygenase? No, they don't produce leukotrienes. So you don't flip-flop that. Are there two forms of cyclooxygenase, one as well as two? Yes, which is inducible, one or two? Which is inducible, one or two? Why that is important? Because since two is inducible, inhibitors of two are used to suppress chronic inflammation. So which are the inhibitors of two you have learned? Then you bring in drugs, physiological clinical application. Give me one example of COX-2 inhibitor you have learned. So COX-1 and COX-2 are different. First of all, cyclooxygenase is not forming leukotrienes. They are forming prostaglandins, thromboxane, prostacyclin. Then COX-1, COX-2 are not the same. Dr. Panini has clearly distinguished that. COX-2 is inducible, very good. Celebrex is an example of COX-2 inhibitor. It is for chronic suppression of inflammation rather than acute, right? Then did we contrast TXA2 and prostacyclin? Which one is vasodilator and antiplatelet aggregatory, good for heart, which is vasodilator and antiplatelet aggregatory, thromboxane or prostacyclin. So compare and contrast. That is also key for this exam. PGE2 and F2 alpha, do you have any clinical importance or physiological importance? Which one is a bronchodilator and which is cytoprotective? Cytoprotective and bronchodilator, PGE2, but you have to specify, not just PGE, PGE2, right? Dr. Panini has explained PGF2 alpha for delivery, PGF2 alpha clinical importance to bring that to. Though if I am not wrong, PGF2 alpha is also used for termination of pregnancy. So you're comparing, contrasting one and two. Acetyl-CoA is not working here. Whose slow reacting substance of anaphylaxis? What are your slow reacting substance of anaphylaxis? LT, C4, D4, and E4. So have you understood this pathway, how I am enumerating it? This is a very good slide, believe me, to get in everything about this. If you are struggling with whether, for example, what is cyclooxygenase 1 and 2, go to Dr. Panini's slide, but a very good overview, what you should know for icosanoid. Everything is there, right? Also, please, steroids act right at the top. So steroids and Celebrex, they are used for chronic suppression of inflammation. Steroids and Celebrex. Got it? Right? So now you compare and contrast. So PGE2, F2, they are from cyclooxygenase pathway or lipooxygenase pathway? PGE2, F2. They are cyclo or lipooxygenase pathway? They are cyclooxygenase pathway, right? And then they're clinical and physiological important. Look at this bronchodilator, PGE2. PGF2 has a different function. PGF2 is also for contraction of uterine smooth muscle, termination of pregnancy. Have you compared, contrast these two? You just told me, very good. Prostacyclin is good for heart. Prostacyclin is good for heart. And did we talk about PGE2 for cytoprotection? These are also coming in side effect. For example, if there are COX-1 inhibition, give me example of irreversible COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitor. Irreversible COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitor. Aspirin. So don't flip-flop their site of action. Aspirin is not inhibiting phospholipase A2. It's a COX-1, COX-2 inhibitor. That's why in aspirin, they are you lose PGE2, which is gastric protection. That's why there's bleeding. Also in COX-2 inhibition, which was with Vioxx. Vioxx is off the market now. TXA2 increased there. So this is also one of the, though pharm will do it more. That's why I don't want you to concentrate more on side effect, What I want you to concentrate in icosanoid is physiological and clinical importance, absolutely. But I'm also showing you how COX-1 inhibition, you can lose some important cytoprotection, and by COX-2 inhibition, you can turn on this pathway. That's why Vioxx was actually put off the market, moved off the market, because in Vioxx, which is COX-2, is Celebrax Vioxx COX-2 inhibitors? Is Celebrax Vioxx COX-2 inhibitors? Are Celebrex and Vioxx? Yeah. In them, in some patient, TXA2 increased. You know, TXA2 is platelet aggregatory. So there were some episodes of thromboembolic phenomena, stroke in patients. That's why it was taken off the market. So see how COX-2 inhibition can turn on COX-1. How COX-1 inhibitor drug, you can lose some important physiological effect. So do these prostaglandin, where is E2 being used? Where am I? Dr. Panini has clearly enumerated the effect, or you don't need to know these trade names, no, but yes, PGE2 bronchodilator. Bring in all your prostaglandins of clinical importance. Please do that. So that's all for today, and I hope this helps.